And I feel, every skill you've gained throughout your career can be beneficial in another area. You just have to think creatively.
There is a new American dream. One that doesn't involve working till you're 65 before you start enjoying life. If you're someone looking for ways to regain control over your time and check off that bucket list now, you're in the right place. We share tips from experts on investing, personal finance, and mindset so that you can finally have the freedom to work less and live more. This is the Freedom Investing Podcast with your host, Kris Toribio.
What's going on, everyone? This is Kris Toribio with the Freedom Investing Podcast, and I am so happy you're here to join us for another amazing episode. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome to the show. Please make sure to hit the subscribe button so that way you can stay up to date with our latest episodes. Moving on to today's guest, we have Micy Liu. Micy founded Life Mission Capital, where she became a general partner and fund manager in over 1,000 units in just 6 months. She also started a real estate investment club with more than 600 members. Today, she helps six-figure busy professionals to invest in real estate so they can focus on what matters to them as well. For Micy, financial literacy is her life mission. Micy, welcome to the show. Before we dive into it, give us a quick 2-minute rundown of who you are, your background, and where you are in your journey to achieving time freedom.
Thank you, Kris. Super excited to be here. I love you started with who you are. I think as we're navigating the freedom journey, whether it's time freedom, financial freedom, geography freedom, spiritual freedom, whatever that might be, it's just so important to start with an identity of who you are. Otherwise, it's hard for you to get to any places. A sail without a destination won't go anywhere. And as I think back, I did this exercise about 7 whys of drilling into why I'm doing certain things. I got to understand who I'm really are. And that really started with being a Christian. It's kind of funny that I mentioned that here in this podcast because, coming from China at the age of 16, I didn't really get exposed to Christianity. And then it's been more of a recent journey for me. So, coming from China, chasing for freedom, whether it's speech freedom, time freedom, financial freedom, it was just freedom, but I didn't really have a purpose. So as I really dove into understanding why I'm doing certain things, and that really came about. And that really helps give me a direction and give me a sense of purpose when I talk to people. And the other things you mentioned about my, portfolio, whether it's passive investing or active investing, fund manager, co-GP, it's all great. But with that journey, with that purpose, it just adds so much more meaning to me. And being in China, education is such a heavy focus, and never got to understand the power of financial literacy, how it can help us get to so many more places we want to go. So I'm on a mission to help people understand that, whether it's kids or adults, to help them understand it earlier so they can use it as a tool to build a legacy and freedom for themselves and their family. Even if, they have a similar background as me, whether they did their career in purchasing or sales or IT or data analytics, I kind of have a jack of all trades career, but then I'm here today, working on my freedom, and people can do it too.
That is fantastic. And I love the fact that you went through that exercise of determining why it is that you're doing it in the first place. When it comes to investing, when it comes to even the job that you choose to go forth and make that your career for the rest of your life, all of that is great, but you have to understand why it is that you're doing it in the first place. Because as you said, it really gives you an opportunity to understand and put together a purpose behind what it is that you do. But now, how did you get into real estate investing in the first place?
Yeah, I got into it because it was actually an accident. I moved back to Arkansas from Chicago and purchased a house because houses were cheaper here. So I started house hacking, and I got a taste of passive income. And the next step was just a no-brainer for me. How can I scale? And I purchased another duplex from there. And then I had a horrible tenant experience. And I think the people, they had probably no bad intentions in their heart. But then it was really impacting me financially speaking from a, investment standpoint during COVID, late payments, and they kind of trashed the place as well. So that's when I started wanting to scale. And when I was scaling, I had during that time, my husband and I were married yet, and we were going through exercising, trying to figure out like why I want to scale. What's the reason behind, apart from just me wanting to grow my freedom? What's the bigger purpose out there? And I realized that when people actually relieved of their financial goals and financial burdens, let me correct that. They're actually more freer to fulfill their maximum capacities in fulfilling their dreams, whether it's art or science, or becoming a doctor, whatever that might be, or just doing nothing. I don't know, but they're just way more, free in the heart and mental capacity to do that. So I wanted to do that for people, especially people who have a heart to pursue a bigger kingdom as well. I think that's a very magical tool. So basically that's how I started my journey, kind of more self-centered and focused. But as I wanted to scale, I had to think bigger.
Absolutely. So now with your goal to think bigger and to continue to scale your real estate portfolio, can you kind of talk to us a little bit about how you made that transition from investing primarily in residential real estate now to commercial real estate? What did that kind of look like?
Yeah, it really started with passive investing, just learning how the ropes are, being a data analytics background. It wasn't just like it looked great on PowerPoint and looked great on social media. I see people, then like I'm good to go. It was a matter of like building trust with the operators I was working with and seeing as a passive investor, is that someone I want to invest with, not just from their track record standpoint, but the way their values are and how they treat people and treat their investors and how they project in themselves. And that's probably the number one thing I was looking at and to get into passive investing. And then the second piece is the data aspect. For me, everything's like input and output and what's the model in between. And I really took time to understand underwriting before I went into my first investment, because to me, all the numbers had to kind of add up. Like, why are they saying 15% IRR? Why are they saying 25% IRR? Like, how likely is it, right? Like, numbers at the end of the day is just numbers. And the returns needs to be risk adjusted. How do I make sure as a passive investor and even as an active investor and as a fund manager, or when I partner with the people, all the returns are risk adjusted. So those are the topics I'm really drilling into, and I was really drilling into to make sure I was protecting my capital and also my investors' capital as well. And those are all went into scaling. Mm-hmm.
That's really powerful. And, the big thing is what you're saying is you're really educating yourself on how to be a passive investor. So that way, when you bring on other investors to invest alongside you, you already know the due diligence process. You already have the relationships with the operators that you know, like, and trust, and understand the rationale behind the numbers and the projections that they're making. So in your experience now, you've been a personal landlord, you were house hacking, and now you're a fund manager. You have over 1,000 units in your portfolio. How has your experience differed in scaling up to this level as opposed to your experience as a residential landlord?
I think it's more of a mindset shift about, what do I really want to do? Do I want to live a life doing the things just because it makes some returns? Or do I want to live a life where I feel I'm leaving a legacy, helping myself, doing the things I love, and also talking to other people, helping them reach their goals. So like I could, being an operator is still a very profitable business. Well, managing my own rental properties can still be very profitable if I enjoy it. Like I truly believe if I want to do that, I can do very well. I have very good experience in standardizing the processes and operations from my corporate experiences, but do I really enjoy it? And the truth is no. I feel horrible whenever I had to ask the resident to leave. Thankfully, I didn't have to evict them. Their lease expired, but I didn't like doing that, going through making people feel bad. Even though it's a business decision, I don't like doing that. So I would prefer letting people excelling in things that they're good at, and me just focusing on what I'm passionate about, helping people reaching their financial freedom, time freedom, geography freedom, and having that freedom to pursue whatever they want, their life mission. So it was more of a mindset shift for me rather than just money.
That's fantastic. And you're right. We talk about your unique ability. We talk about your superpower in real estate. And it sounds like in your case, you have that superpower in being able to help others invest in real estate passively. And you can delegate or leverage the expertise and experience of others to take on the other roles, such as managing the asset, such as acquisitions, things of that sort. So that way you can focus on what you do best. That's powerful. So one of the things that you mentioned a lot was your data analytics position in your corporate life. So it sounds like you leveraged your experience as a data analytics person when it comes to doing your due diligence on real estate deals and things like that. So how much of that has actually crossed over into your real estate investing career? And for someone who doesn't have that kind of background, what would you suggest that they do in order to be able to be successful in this space?
I think that's a great question. And I feel, every skill you've gained throughout your career can be beneficial in another area. You just have to think creatively. And I say that because I've changed my career quite a few times. I started in college with a marketing major. I did a bunch of internships in marketing. And then I went into supply chain in my education and also in my career as well. After a few years in that, I went into IT space because I got tired of doing the same thing over and over on the business side. It was very repetitive. I was like, how can I automate some of this? And data was really popular, data analytics, data science. So I switched into that. So what I'm trying to say is I've had multiple career transitions even before real estate. And I always try to leverage my previous experience, get into my next role. And similarly in real estate, right? Like we still have a lot of things like when I work with my operators, there's kind of, if you think of it, it's a service for me. So I'm kind of leveraging my buying experience to really work with my products, which are coming from my operators, right? I mean, it's not exactly like that, but you can think of it like that at a high level, right? Like as a private equity firm, our products is the investments, which are in partnership with my partners. And it usually comes from them finding the properties. And I decide through my due diligence process if them as sponsors and their location and their asset works for me and my investors, right? So it starts with that. And then there is also the component of the data analytics piece, understanding the due diligence. There's only so many factors that goes into a deal. And there's a lot of unpredictable elements, but they all falls under things like major economy, right? So the macro and micro. So the macro, the bigger stuff is economy, geographical, political attention, details, what's happening with Russia and different things like that. And that usually manifests itself in cap rate expansions. Like I can only underwrite so much to my knowledge, and not everyone believes in aliens, but for some reason, if there's aliens and they come attack the earth, I know it's a little out there, but I can't underwrite that. I wouldn't have underwritten COVID in 2019, right? So things like that's just out of the norm. But the typical things like multifamily or whatever, it's pretty standard. You have your input, which is what's the rent, what's what you see as job growth in the area, and what are you projecting to be your expenses based on what you're seeing in the area? And you have a strong property management team that looked at the property and see what they think the expenses, the capex is. And then you look at what the debt is and, likelihood of rate going up and based on the rate cap. And then the output is really the returns, which are a combination of three elements. You have the cash flows, appreciations, and tax benefits. Tax benefits is usually pretty standard. You work with a grades and cost segregation firm. You can figure that out. They're the expert. I don't want to, step on their toes. They can tell me the numbers. And then cash flow is just, income minus expenses, take out debt services and related expenses. And that's essentially the cash flow, right? And then the appreciation is really a NOI divided by a cap rate. So the math is not complex. That's what I'm trying to say. You don't need a PhD or master's in data analytics like I did to do this stuff. But if you want to break it down, input and output, there's only so many variables out there. And once you feel good about the assumptions you make on those variables, it's really a fairly self-explanatory deal. So that's the one component. And the other component is to make sure because everything varies by asset class, varies by location, varies by geography, varies by that sponsor's experience. So that's where you have to do it and talk to enough people and understand enough about a specific area to actually make the decision and say that assumption is reasonable and conservative. So that comes with experience. But hopefully that answers your question. How do you leverage your previous experience, no matter what it is, into that space? And also, how do you look at the overall underwriting process as input and output? What are the input and what are the outputs?
I love that. And, that's something that we can really resonate with. We come from a background in healthcare. So as healthcare providers coming into the commercial real estate space and becoming real estate investors, there was a lot of imposter syndrome that we experienced because of that. We don't have that background in finance. We don't have that background in business or data analytics. But the one thing that we understood is if you can surround yourself with the people that are in this space and grow your network, so that way you have people in your team that can be able to explain to you what their experiences are, share with you the different types of terminology, that can really make a huge difference in terms of your growth and your understanding of this business. And so terminology, one of the things that you had brought up there was cap rates, NOI. Can you kind of give our listeners a little bit of a definition of like what a cap rate is? And you mentioned cap rate expansion. What would you say a cap rate expansion is for our listeners?
Sure. So a lot of the syndication opportunities were not just relying on the market to appreciate because of inflation, or as just market real estate do tend to appreciate, but we're just not waiting just for the trend. The opportunity lies on the ability to value add. And the reason I started with a background, because that's important. The value add is to typically fixing up the places, being able to add value to the residents and to the property in a way that increases our net operating income. That could be adding things that increases our rent income, and while increasing the operational efficiencies to reduce the expenses. That's just one component of the forced appreciation, the major component, or forcing appreciation. If you remember, the purchase price or market price is basically the operating income divided by cap rate. I want to give that understanding first, because cap rate is just cap rate. Like, why does it matter? Because it matters for how people value a property, how banks value properties, how appraisals value properties, and how we look at it as a buyer. So that's why the operating income is important. But the other piece of the equation is the cap rate. So assuming the operating income stays the same, meaning we're able to increase income to reduce expenses, then the cap rate is going to change how you're able to buy or sell the property for. Let's say 3 or 5 years within the business plan. That's when you plan to sell the property. So when we assume cap rate expansion, that means we're assuming the cap rate goes up. That means if you think NOI divided by cap rate, I know you're probably doing a little mental math in your head, but if the cap rate goes up, that means you're able to sell the property for less, assuming the same net operating income. And that's scary. Like, you buy a property for $5 million and you sell it for $3 million. Nobody wants that, right? So that's why. But that's conservative because you don't know what's happening in the market. So we want to assume a cap rate expansion, assuming things may go wrong in the market in the future. I don't know, COVID or some type of economic situation that's affecting us, or the geographically something that may not make that property with location as desirable as before. Many risk factors we can't justify for. So we assume that expansion. So how do we make sure when we sell the property we can sell for higher? Then you find ways to increase the net operating income, and that's through the operations I mentioned to increase the gross income through maybe higher rents or pet fees, higher application fees, or trash pickup fees, depending on the type of class of multifamily or short-term rentals, right? Like, we're in multiple different asset classes, not just multifamily. We're in short-term rentals. We've been looking at mobile home parks for a long time, so different things. So coming back to the topic, so net operating income divided by cap rate. So we're forcing the net operating income to go up, even assuming a cap rate expansion, meaning assuming the environment for some reason is going to get worse, we're still able to make a profit. So let's say $5 million that we purchased, and because we increased the net operating income, and even though the market environment isn't as desirable, maybe because of interest rate increases like we're seeing, we're still able to make a profit when we sell, which is, if you remember, it's like one of the 3 important returns. You have the cash flow, appreciation, and the tax benefit. So a lot of times the appreciation, weighs into about at least 40 to 50% of your overall return. So you really want to make sure that play is played right. So And that's where you look at, how much value are they really adding? If there's not much value add, then we're just really waiting for the market, right? And then we'll have to make sure that the exit is really flexible for us to have the opportunity to exit at the right time of the market. So I know it's a little bit longer explanation, but I just wanted to give the background of why it's important. The cap rate by itself is not important, but when it's put in a context, when we buy or sell, that's when it's important.
Okay, that was a ton of really good information there, Micy. It obviously shows that you are well versed in the terminology and the understanding of the space. And for the sake of our listeners, I really just want to make sure we summarize this so that way they can understand this. So when it comes to the way real estate is valued, there's a difference between residential and commercial assets. If you're looking at a value of a small multifamily property or even a single family home, most people can have a general understanding of how that's valued, and that's based off of comparable properties that are in that area. So if you're going to be executing a strategy to increase the value of that property, you are actually going to be doing things that the other comparable properties that are worth more than this one are doing. More often than not, that's renovating the kitchens, the bathrooms, putting on a new layer of paint, things of that sort, mostly cosmetic, so that way you can match the quality of those renovated units. In the case of commercial real estate investing, the way those assets are valued are much different. They are based off of more of like a business where it's dependent on the net operating income, which is your income minus your expenses, and the market cap rate. So the market cap rate, again, is, as Micy was saying, is kind of an arbitrary number, and it varies from market to market, asset class to asset class, but ultimately it's a metric that is used to kind of describe how assets are valued within that area. And so when you divide the income, the net operating income divided by that cap rate, that's how you can help justify a purchase price or what that asset is valued in that market. And so what we want to do when it comes to being conservative is assuming that the value of that asset is actually going to go down over the course of the time we're holding it, whether that be 3 to 5 years, like Micy said. And that's just one of those ways that we want to make sure that we underpromise and hopefully overdeliver, or at the very least, make sure that we protect ourselves against a black swan event like COVID. Does that sound just about right there, Micy?
Yeah, that was a very good explanation. Thank you for elaborating over that. I forget sometimes people who are in residential space and they look at things a little differently than us in the commercial space. So I think that was a very good bridge. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah. So now when it comes to doing this, you're scaled up to this portfolio in commercial real estate. Do you still have your full-time job?
Yes, I still have my full-time job in working in the supply chain product analytics space, forecasting. So still data side for one of the largest companies in the world and in the US. So it's been a challenge balancing those two, but I do feel very fulfilled and scaling with my team and my partners. And while I'm continuing to, work on my W-2 stuff.
So how would you describe this to someone who still has a full-time job, wants to get into this space? How have you kind of managed your time throughout this entire experience?
I think managing time is one aspect, and the other part is probably managing the expectations. We only have 24 hours in the day, and we can't be everything to everyone. So understand what your priorities are. And you have to discuss that with your significant other, make sure they're on board. So I've had many lengthy conversations with my husband, and I mean, he's always been on board from day one, but it's also about actually experiencing it. So we'll have to make adjustments to our lifestyle when it's, maybe other couples would be doing movie nights like maybe every evening. We won't be doing that. Like he's working on his passions, I'm working on my passions, but we'll have to make time for us to do some activities together each week as well. I shouldn't say we have to. I think that's just, I was trying to word it that way, but we would need to make time if we can just kind of correct that.
I love that. Yes, you choose what you choose what you want to make a priority in your life, and having that conversation with that significant other is very important.
Yeah, I think understanding the expectations. Like I may not be able to do this every evening, but here are the things we could do to leverage our time, and making sure we're where we want to be, where we are enjoying our time together. Because sometimes freedom for people seems like far away, but also it's presence, right? Like how do we find a balance of enjoying presence and the future? So I would say that that's kind of first, and then the time management piece. I wouldn't say I'm an expert at it or anything, but definitely leveraging people who are business partners or your employees. In this case, I have 2 full-time remote employees working for me, and they're fantastic. Kudos to them for all the great work they've been doing. And setting the expectations to yourself. Some areas may not be perfect at it, and you have to be okay with that. We only have so many mental focus that we can have in a particular day. So I think just about choosing your battles. Also, I want to just take a step back. I know sometimes some people who are listening to this podcast may be passive or active investors. And I want to mention that, like, people go active for certain reasons, right? Like, I can see myself doing this for a long, long period of time because of my passion with talking with people, helping them reach their goals in this space. But not everyone's like that. I'm perfectly fine also being a passive investor and just teaching people and not make a profit if I chose to do that in the future. So I think it's about understanding what you love doing, and it may or may not be active investing. Passive investing is great. And a lot of people who go into active investing with the goal of eventually 100% just passive investing. So understanding what's important for you, like I said before, your identities and who you are, where you want to go, versus just I want to make $10,000 in passive income. That leads to nowhere, because once you get there, then what? You can't just stop in life. Like, what's the ultimate journey you're wanting to have? How are you making baby steps towards that?
I love that. Yeah. And again, that goes back to what the purpose is behind all of this stuff. In your case, Micy, I am curious, if you get to the situation where you no longer have to worry about how much money you're earning, or you have all of your expenses covered, you have well more coming in than you can possibly choose to do with it, what would you choose to do with your time?
Yeah, I think a few spaces. One is the financial literacy space. I think, I don't recall if you mentioned about the Junior Achievement Program that I was a little bit more heavily involved in, not as much as I would like. They have a branch in China, but they're not expanding a lot in China. I like to help them expand into different schools in China to help more kids understand financial literacy. And, if I can get done with China, maybe another country from there, I don't know. I still have many years ahead of me as a person, assuming we live 80 years old or more. And then the second piece would be some type of mission work. For some reason, I think I'm being positioned in a place where I hang out with a lot of people who has done missionary work. And I didn't really venture out for it. It just kind of naturally happened. So I feel, God is planting a seed in me to prepare for that type of work in the future, even though I'm not doing anything even remotely to that. I did go to one mission trip in Memphis alone a year or two ago. So I felt it's about seed planting, and that seed was being planted in me. And I'm hoping through this conversation we're having today, with you or another audience, I'm planting a seed for them, whether they act on it right away or not. I hope it's on top of their mind to encourage them to do something to build their legacy and their freedom, whether it's passive investing or active investing, whatever they choose to be.
That's great. And that's something that we hold near and dear to our hearts, as well as mission work, because as healthcare providers, if we get to the point where we no longer have to work our W-2 jobs, we would like to create some sort of medical mission trip or ongoing brigade, so that way we can leverage our health skills as healthcare providers to provide for communities in need around the world. So that's maybe we can work together on that sometime in the future there, Micy.
Yeah, that would be great. It's one of the fundamental hierarchy. If we look at hierarchy of needs, it's one of the fundamental needs, right? Like, if people can't even be healthy, they can't accomplish the goals that they want to do and make a difference for others either.
Absolutely. All right, folks. Well, we're coming toward the end of today's show, but before we finish, it is time for our Freedom 5. These are 5 questions that we ask every guest on our show, starting with the most important question, which you probably answered this already. But what is your why? What is the underlying motivation behind everything it is that you do?
Yeah. Good question. And I think I did answer it. It's about why it's important for me, and it's about my identity, and about I'm a Christian, and how I want to use my skills to build his kingdom. And to me, it's leveraging my ability to connect with people, helping them relieve their financial burdens and financial stress and really look further than where they're at today.
Powerful. What book has had the largest influence in your life?
I would say Who Not How so far. That's one of the books that comes into my mind because I always try to do everything by myself, and I realize there's people who's done it really well. Why do I have to start from scratch? So leveraging what other people are already doing and being able to add value to them. And the same thing, that's why my passive investors are leveraging me, right? Like not everyone wants to spend 30, 40, 50, 60, I don't know how many hours I spend per week doing this stuff, vetting things, and they can leverage me and my white glove service to take their life to the next level.
Absolutely. There are so many different things in life you can leverage, but the most important thing you could probably leverage is your time. So you're right. You know, when it comes to growth and achieving your goals, and everyone has different goals, if you can identify people and understanding who can help you achieve those goals and do the things you don't want to do, so that way you can focus on the things you do, it'll make your experience and your whole journey towards this thing a lot more efficient, as also a lot more enjoyable as well. Mm-hmm. All right. The third question here is, what is the most impactful thing, whether that be a piece of technology, a habit, or a person, that has helped in freeing up your time?
In freeing up my time?
Yes.
I would say my two wonderful remote employees. I think it's been a journey that we kind of all grew together, learning on things, and being able to, being in a different shoe to, because I'm no longer just an employee in another job. I'm also responsible for some of their family's financial resources and their time and how they feel during their day. Therefore, what they've done for me has been wonderful. So leveraging people in many levels, but I feel very connected to the wonderful work my employees has done.
That's amazing. And we also have a VA as well that we've kind of onboarded, and he's been with us for the past year. And as you're saying, you are now responsible for the financial wellness of those employees as well. And it's definitely both a very good responsibility and a good feeling knowing that you can provide that impact for someone else. The fourth question that we have here is, what is your number one piece of advice you would give to anyone looking to achieve more control over their time?
Yeah, number one is to start with your identity, who you are, the characters you want to have in your legacies, whether it's your lifestyle or your decent people in your family. I would say start with that and then work backwards or to the lifestyle you want to have with the identity. And then, to what you need to do in your expenses and your income and your investment. That way you have a clear direction that you're heading to.
Fantastic. And finally, the fifth and final question is, what is the best way for our listeners to get in contact with you?
Thank you. Yeah, definitely. The best way to get in contact is to visit my website, lifemissioncapital.com. And, if you're familiar with syndications already, there is a great book out there for you, 110 Questions to Ask Before Investing Syndications. And you can get a taste of how I look at some of the opportunities and questions I ask as well when we look at the investment opportunities.
Amazing. Well, Micy, that's a lot of great information that you shared with us today. I really liked how you described your journey coming to here from China at the age of 16, becoming a Christian, house hacking, and now transitioning to commercial multifamily space. I love how you shared your tips and tricks in terms of how you leverage the expertise of others to help grow your business, and also the mindset shift that you had to encounter as you went throughout your journey into becoming from a personal landlord to a fund manager of over 1,000 units. Micy, I just want to thank you again for being a fantastic guest on our show, and I look forward to remaining in touch.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kris. It's been fun. Thank you.
Talk soon. Now, if you like this show and want to learn more about how we can help you free up your time through passive real estate investments, check out www.freedominvesting.com. Make sure to subscribe to our monthly newsletter and schedule an introductory call with our team. We also have a free 7-day course on what passive real estate investing is and how to get started so that you can start your journey towards earning back more time in your life. To all of our amazing listeners here on the Freedom Investing Podcast, my name is Kris Toribio. Till next time.